if you can win a playoff game with Tim Tebow at quarterback in the NFL, you
Pats are winning the
you
Super
know how to
Bowl.
make that work. Fucking A, dude.
They're winning the Super Bowl.
And and they know coming in that they don't have many options, right? Like they
Yeah.
traded Gronk away for nothing. They've still got a pretty good defensive core, but offensively they're like, we know we got what we got. So I think they're very quickly going to be teaching guys or letting them know that they're going to be running some read options and
Yeah.
doing some things that are going to accommodate Cam Newton. All right. So we're talking about Cam Newton signed a 1-year deal with the New England Patriots, and that does what for the Pats?
Well, it makes me interested in Edelman. Makes me interested in nobody else. uh, I mean, who do you want on that team? You still don't want James White, do you? I mean, he made his living off of Tom Brady dumping the ball off. Um, there's no other pass catcher that you're feeling good about over there right now. So for me, my only interest really is Cam Newton himself, which I would be really interested in, and Edelman. And I think for me, that's about where it stops. I would kind of perceive Edelman to be wide receiver two, probably still, because I think Cam Newton can feed him the ball, and I just think he's really good. But that's as far as my fantasy implications are probably going to go for that team still.
With Tom Brady being there for so long, there was like kind of a template, and I think that you could look at examples where this may not always have been the case, but definitely over the last few years, he's been somebody that has definitely relied more on those halfback dump offs, and he's definitely, taken Edelman or Gronk across the middle and just kind of taken safe passes wherever the defense is allowing it. I I think if you put Cam in this offense, if there was a running back that you were interested in for running purposes, that you would be as interested in him if Brady were still there as you were now with Cam.
Think
I
so?
think that keeps that needle the same. I think that someone like Edelman is less interesting to me than if Brady were there, obviously. I think the bump, though, going from Stidham to Cam is slight, and I think it's because Edelman thrives on intricacies, and Cam's known for needing bigger targets and not being quite as precise. So
That's
I
true.
do think it saves Edelman's season.
hmm
I don't think he's top 10.
I definitely don't think top 10, but to be honest, I didn't really think we weren't thinking top 10 for the last couple of years, even with Brady, with him, partly due to age and
No.
injury and all that. But uh,
He did have such a great year last year that I just thought it was worth noting. Like, I
yeah,
don't think that's happening. I'm not trying to say that.
agreed, agreed. But don't you think though that Cam Newton can adjust? At the end of the day, he's a vet, and he's gonna know to target his best receiver and the guy that's always gonna be open, and he's gonna be right there in front of him, in the middle of the field is gonna be Edelman. I mean, on top of that,
He's
it's
definitely going to try it.
yeah, and
Like,
Belichick's
there's going to be
gonna have
opportunity.
a game plan in place, and they're gonna that offense is gonna want they're gonna want that to go a very specific way. Well, the other problem with this though is that we don't know what the hell's gonna happen with the season in general. But if we're talking just about this right now, like how much time are they gonna get to practice? How much time is Cam Newton gonna get with the playbook and actually working with the people on that offense and the coaching staff? Like how much of a relationship is going to be built before the season hopefully starts? Because that's gonna he won't he, there's no way he would start the year. At the very least, he's not playing for the first several games. If that ends up being the case, so that's there's something to think
They have
about there too.
Stidham, though. I mean, maybe Hoyer changes that for me, where it's like they're familiar with Hoyer. He knows how it goes. He had some flashes with them, if you want to call it that. But I mean, that would change that. Yeah. I mean, like if they run him out there for the first few weeks, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and that would matter for me too if I was even considering like a Nettleman or if I was looking at one of those running backs late. Um, Depending on how much time Cam Newton actually gets with those guys, that would matter to me. I wouldn't be looking at even drafting Edelman if it ends up being one of these deals where like none of these guys are playing together until the season starts. Then I'm probably
It
not even
makes
interested.
Well, it makes N'Keal Harry my one of my bigger post hype sleepers
Yeah,
based on some of the moves that have been made. I mean, the dude's coming in. You know he can throw it down the field. It's just gonna be I mean, like, as much as we look at Tom Brady and we ask ourselves, like, you just always ask yourself, how much of it's Bill, how much of it's Tom, right? And we're going to find out this year.
Yeah.
But I think that Cam's Cam, and I think that he's one of the most true to himself kind of guys that we have in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, he's going to take shots down the field. And if that turns into something that provides N'Keal Harry an opportunity that he didn't have last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, everyone knew he had talent when he got drafted in the first round out of, I want to say, NC State. I mean,
And you can't just completely disregard a sophomore receiver who didn't produce his rookie year either. More often than not, these
no.
guys don't produce. If nothing else, the lack of competition there too with targets. Like if he's going to be on the field, it is interesting, and he is interesting. He's probably more interesting with Cam Newton than maybe he even was with Tom Brady. Because
I for sure think so. I think, well, we were talking before, and what was his name? Malcolm Brown was somebody that looked good
Yeah.
for like a long period of time, and then he just disappeared. It's like, well, what's happening to these young guys? Are they just not vibing? You know, is it an off the field thing? I don't know.
Antonio Brown making some headline news again, which is it's gonna be like this all off season.
Again,
So the title reads: Antonio Brown still has a long way to go before he's cleared to return to the NFL, but the Seahawks and Ravens have had internal discussions about signing him. That's Mike Silver. So where in the hell do we start with this? Let's start with Baltimore, because I just think that's more interesting right now to talk about. What do you believe this is going to mean for that entire team, but like Hollywood Brown, that receiving and the tight end in particular? If, let's say, in a hypothetical world this actually happened, what do you think that means for them?
so I think that with Baltimore, it's going to be a place that doesn't provide Antonio Brown what he would require to be happy. So if this guy truly has transformed, which I'm not going to believe until he's 8 weeks into an NFL season and hasn't hit a headline,
Yeah.
it's just how we have to do it at this point, right? Like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And until that does happen, if I'm Baltimore, I'm not interested. I think that Marquise Brown is a really intriguing player. I think that the best thing that could happen for Marquise Brown is that the Ravens get their hands on a receiver that contrasts him, but also kind of takes him out of that number one role and just kind of lets him flourish as a number two till he kind of gets his feet wet and really really takes
Hollywood
off.
right now.
For sure. I think the best thing that could happen to Hollywood Brown is that someone comes in that is clearly ahead of him on the depth chart and just gives him a true opportunity to shine. I don't think that adding another route runner, Antonio Brown kind of guy, is really going to complement Lamar Jackson, and I think it's going to maybe take more opportunities away and hinder the development of Brown than getting someone that's kind of polar opposite as far as like receiver skill sets go. I mentioned Dez Bryant earlier. I think it's an intriguing thing. I mean, I don't think the dude's a stud anymore, but like just a big box out kind of guy with a big name that's gonna just take all the interviews, until Hollywood Brown really shows something. And I think someone like that you'd get more value out of than Antonio Brown.
Beside, with the exception of the fact that Antonio was going to require so much attention, that
Yeah.
Hollywood being the burner that he is. By the way, they're cousins.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
I
thought
didn't
about
even
that.
think of that.
I didn't either until just now.
Oh.
That would be funny. So maybe that's why the Ravens, maybe Hollywood Brown's working that magic.
He could be.
He, him deep, he might be open deep a lot this year. We already were kind of anticipating him to level up a little bit. Antonio Brown's going to require a lot of attention. I mean, can't you just like picture Antonio looking like he's going to go deep, comes across the middle of the field, a safety pulls up, Hollywood, 65-yard bomb, touchdown. Like that's something you can see you could picture happening quite a bit.
J.K. Dobbins edition, I know you're big on that. So, like, their running game is good. Obviously, Mark Ingram is a very good running back. No one can deny that at this point, even if he slips in drafts again, which he shouldn't. I mean, you have nothing but good things to say about J.K.
I love Dobbins. Yeah, it's just one of those deals where it's not. I don't think it's going to be immediate. I think by the end of the year, him and Ingram are going to be in some sort of timeshare. if Ingram ever goes down, Dobbins is gonna be one of he should be drafted in all leagues. Really, it shouldn't be a guy that even makes the free agency or waiver wire, and I don't think he will. But he's gonna be one of those guys that's gonna be worth drafting, even as a backup and a definite handcuff. Not many of them out there. I think he'd be one of them. But I think something you're definitely going to hear a lot of people talking about, like if a move like that happened with Antonio going to the Ravens, would be the target distribution. Like, that argument of, is there enough to go around? I usually don't give a shit about that, but I kind of do with the Ravens because they are so run heavy. And so, if Antonio is probably not going to get 12, 15 targets a game, which was pretty regular for him in Pittsburgh. So for as good as he is, and as much as I do think he will demand the volume, I don't know if it's really it's gonna be there enough to make him like the top 3 guy, which any other year you would just assume is automatic.
Well, that's definitely a part that there were like 2 different parts that I'd want to touch on about Antonio Brown potentially going to Baltimore, and one was the volume. So like, how is he going to handle a lower volume? Because when he went to Oakland, he definitely, it's now LA, but when he went to the Raiders, Las Vegas, which is actually more exciting to me. But when he went to the Raiders, he definitely felt like he was the dude, the number 1, 2, and 3. I mean, that was before Darren Waller really broke out, and like he just had to have been thinking like volume. He demanded it in Pittsburgh, and it is that alone I think is going to mean the most on how he might fit into Baltimore in their offense. I think that the secondary factor to consider is, so like Lamar Jackson's electric, and people want to knock his passing ability, and I appreciate that he actually made a concerted effort to improve as a passer last year, and I think that his run threat did assist his passing stats. So I'm not saying he's like Patrick Mahomes level passer, but he did take a step forward on that, and the stats support that. My concern with that is that his read options, or when he's considering running, or even just escaping pressure, we have to remember that Marshall Yanda just retired, and that guy has been a staple for them for like 13 years. He's been an all-pro guard. When he isn't there, is Lamar Jackson now focusing more on pressure than he already was, because that's all teams wanted to do was get to him? And if that is the case, he has the ability to scramble, right? And so we may be thinking about the ability of the players individually, but how does this translate to the gameplay? Well, if Lamar Jackson is running read options and bootlegging, what he's doing is he's reading the defense, and a lot of his focus and his attention is going to the short yardage, to the within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He's reading D linemen, he's reading linebackers. If they give Antonio Brown enough attention, which he would appreciate, but also will help their team, if he's there and they give him enough attention, I do believe that, I totally agree with you, that Marquise Brown could be running wild down the field. And what I think is that if Lamar Jackson's out there scrambling a little bit, or shedding a tackle in the backfield, the deep ball is the pass that should be available to him in that situation. It's not going to be when his feet aren't set and he's out, outside of the numbers on the edge of the field. He's not going to be setting his feet and making a precise throw across the middle. I don't think a lot of quarterbacks have the ability to do that. But on top of that, if he gets pushed away from like a short route that Antonio Brown is running, and Lamar Jackson then gets pushed to the far side of the field, that route's now negated. I mean, even there's some opportunities there, obviously, because they're spreading the field out so much. But there are some times where I would also think that maybe Brown's running a route and drawing some extra attention, but if they're not feeding him or giving him enough volume, it's not considered a threat by the defense.
That's why AB to any team is so interesting, because he's gonna demand so much attention that it just frees up so much. It just frees up so much.
If he's not looking in front of him too much, and Lamar Jackson can hit some of those intermediate throws to AB, I mean it's gonna help everything out so much.
Defenses are gonna have to decide: are we focusing on AB on this? How long can you stay with him if Lamar scrambles? Not long. If Lamar does scramble, oh shit, we forgot about Hollywood. He's gone. There's for the team. I think it would be huge. For Hollywood, I think it would be huge. And obviously, AB would be a wide receiver 1. He would have to be drafted that way, at the very least. And we should probably move on to the Seahawks. A lot of what we already said, you can kind of Like
Well,
I think you could
Ravens
say that.
though were
Mhm.
my direct comparison. The attention that AB drops or demands. Like recent comparison though, like OBJ is that same category, same caliber of player where he's making catches underneath, he's making catches out
Yeah,
wide.
doing it all.
I would prefer to have Lamar Jackson over Baker Mayfield, but look at what OBJ didn't do for the for the Browns last year or the year before. And I don't think that's a knock on OBJ. It's just
Mm-mm.
that
I think you're talking
sometimes
about just two totally different organizations. Is what you're looking at there.
yeah, but OBJ's talent level is in that same tier I think right
It
today
is.
where it's like this dude should improve every team he goes to and it
That's
didn't.
true.
And
That's
so
true.
it's just kind of crazy.
If
I don't
AB
it
went
blows
to
my mind.
Cleveland, if AB went to Cleveland, hashtag not interested.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the league, I'm interested.
Fair.
Um, okay, well, what I was going to bring up about the Seahawks, because, that was the other team that was mentioned, that internal discussions was the quote. I think a lot that you would want to say about the Ravens and AB, you could probably translate a lot of that to Seattle. To sort of save time, we could probably just touch really on the names there, the players themselves, and what that might mean for them. Obviously, it would be great for Russell Wilson. Obviously, it would be even better for their run game. The person that I believe probably gets hurt the most from this would be Tyler Lockett. I'm still really interested in Metcalf, regardless of if AB was to go there or not. And same thing for AB. He's going to be a wide receiver one no matter where he goes, unless it's Cleveland. So I think Lockett would be out for me. I don't even think he's a guy I'd be looking at to draft. He would have to go super late, and he probably won't. So he would just, at that point, he would be a guy who wouldn't be on any one of my teams. And I know you probably feel in the same way about Lockett. He kind of disappeared at the end of the year as well last year, so that doesn't help either. I know he was banged up, but come on, guy. You've had a lot of opportunities here. You had one really good year.
Tyler Lockett to me is somebody I've been interested in. He did put together a couple of really good years back to back. The reason that I wasn't interested in drafting him last year, everyone tells, not everyone, but a lot of old school guys or guys that have been in fantasy for a while will tell you never write a player off. And to an extent, I agree. But if you're surprised by a player, there's a reason for it. And maybe so I wrote Tyler Lockett off last year going into the draft, but the reason that I did is because his value came from touchdowns, and I didn't see him putting up those same touchdown numbers the following year. So that being said, I happen to be right. I mean, who knows until the season plays itself out. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the part that draws my interest, and I guess what I have to say about someone like Tyler Lockett is that it's somebody that did have a down year last year, but he has shown that he's somebody you do want on your roster multiple years beforehand, and that if AB goes to Seattle, definitely keep an eye on DK Metcalf. He's a freak, very good, and he played strong last year. I really liked watching him,
Yeah.
but it takes someone like Tyler Lockett off your draft board or drops him much lower than you might have already had him.
Yeah.
My point in that is just that it is indirectly to me, it's removing a receiver that you would desire from your draft pool, and it kind of gives us one fewer option from somebody that you're really excited about. So now you're looking at who Baltimore's second receiver is without Antonio Brown instead of a Tyler Lockett, and that there's a shift that happens there if these guys go to certain places. And that's about all I really had to say about that. I think that Tyler Lockett's a good fit for Seattle. I think he's somebody that I've enjoyed having on my teams in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Not somebody I'd be interested in if AB went there, and it's one less quality option to plug into your roster every week.
Completely agree. Agree with all that. We have one more major thing that's going to happen in the last week. Dak Prescott. He is intended to sign his $31.4 million franchise tender by Monday. So we can kind of at least put that in the books. I think we kind of figured that this was going to happen anyway. It seemed like they couldn't agree on a deal. But at least we know he's playing. So obviously Dak is I guess you and I haven't really talked about how you feel about Dak himself, but I mean as a quarterback and just not what this means for everybody else on the team. Dak probably a top 5 quarterback, right? I mean, he had a great year last year. I don't see any reason why he won't again this year. He's got even more weapons around him now. I guess the offensive line is a little bit of a concern because there is some changes there. But, they go and get CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, we know everybody else on that roster. Cooper's re-signed. So this is great news for the Cowboys. This is great news for me as an Ezekiel Elliott owner. I'm very happy about this. I was a little nervous about this whole Andy Dalton situation. So anyway, so Dak will be back, and it's going to be great for everybody. Probably excited about CeeDee Lamb, aren't you? That's your boy.
Yeah, so like Dak, I was really down on Dak like 2 years ago, and it was a great opportunity for him to really prove himself. He had his rookie year was good. It was very good. And he was very polarizing at that point. And then the following years when Zeke missed some time, and I felt like that was the perfect opportunity for him to really prove himself, and he didn't. So I immediately bumped him down pretty far, and I was just on the opinion that he is an okay quarterback that was in a very good circumstance. Last year did
This
move
was
my
during the
needle on.
period when Dez was not there, right? And he didn't really have anyone to throw to.
I believe so. I believe so. What happens is last year, obviously they have Amari Cooper for the full season. They picked him up late the prior season. So last year with Cooper, he looked really good. But it wasn't just to Cooper, and it wasn't just Cooper bailing him out. It was Dak, to me right now, is a quarterback that isn't going to necessarily make the players around him better like some of the elites, but if he has the weapons available to him, he can definitely capitalize on what's there, and he is willing to use all of his options when on any given play. I do think that he's grown some, but I also think that he's got the appropriate amount of help with Cooper, and then CeeDee Lamb. That's part of the reason I'm big on him too, is that you go and you infuse more talent into that receiving core when he just took a step forward and they just re-signed Cooper. I think Dak needs someone like Cooper around, but I think that getting CeeDee Lamb where they did in the draft and just putting some more talent in that receiver core, I mean, it could mean big things for that whole offense.
What do you think about Michael Gallup?
I think Michael Gallup is like a segue to what CeeDee Lamb's going to be. I mean, who knows down the road if Amari Cooper
Stays healthy and is on the field.
exactly. I mean, like the best thing for both of them is probably that CeeDee Lamb and or Gallup take some volume away from Cooper because they are three deep now. And but personally, Gallup directly, I think that's somebody you have to respect. I think that
He could be
aren't
somebody.
enough.
He could
There
be
aren't
a forgotten name this
there
year.
aren't many defenses that are going to have the ability to divide their attention amongst those three guys and not have problems.
Gallup took a step forward last year. He looked pretty good last year. He looked really good last year. He might be someone that people forget about because of the flashy names. Obviously Amari, but CeeDee Lamb, the new face, something you don't know yet, the unknown. So people are always going to be attracted to that. Gallup could be, he might be the biggest payoff of that receiving core just based off of where they're going to go in the draft. I'm just going to assume that Lamb is. I haven't looked at any mocks in ADPs yet, but I'm assuming that CeeDee Lamb is probably going ahead of Gallup. I don't think there's really a lot of interest for him right now, and he would probably be someone that I would be targeting late because I don't think he's going to cost that much, and he could still end up being a wide receiver too on that team. He could easily outperform CeeDee Lamb this year. Lamb might have some win you week games, some really big flashy games maybe, but he could also end up being very inconsistent, and Gallup might just be that steady guy.
Well, let's not forget what happened when Calvin Ridley came in under the wing of Julio Jones and Austin Hooper. To me, Calvin Ridley's talent level should have him producing more than he has up to this point in his career. So let's temper the expectations a little bit. If CeeDee Lamb's going super high, just know that you're rolling the dice on it. This is at the very least going to be a transitional year for CeeDee Lamb, even if he does end up being one of the dudes down the road.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're into a dynasty league or you're keeping, 5 guys, in a 10 or 12 team league, maybe you're keeping 3 or 4. It's somebody I definitely would like to take a little bit earlier to see how it unfolds. Also to see how Gallup plays out. I mean, Dallas doesn't have a lot of money to spend, and they're looking at potentially adding Jamal Adams to the mix too.
Somehow.
So, I mean, someone like Michael Gallup is interesting to me because I think he could have a good year this year in redraft leagues, but also their inability to re-sign him theoretically could also provide a much better opportunity for CeeDee Lamb in the next year or two, on a team that may be tying up a lot of their salary cap in a handful of players. We don't have Jason Witten on the field anymore, so they may be going into the season not relying on their tight ends as much as they would have receiving wise, even though they knew he was an older guy. He's a Hall of Fame tight end. Another branch of that I'd want to touch on is we saw Zeke Elliott take screen passes and dump offs up sidelines regularly, early in his career. He is totally capable of doing that, but if you've got three receivers out there demanding the amount of attention that they should, and you notice that Pollard's out there getting a few looks, and it's in the passing game specifically, I'm going to be paying attention to that. We don't know, and I'm not making some bold prediction, but what I'm saying is that if you find yourself watching some Dallas games early in the year, and 2 to 3 weeks in, you've noticed that they've made a concerted effort to get Pollard the ball in open space, I'm paying attention to that.
Sure.
I'm not investing in handcuffs for injury reasons, but there are some guys that could make a lot out of a few touches, and I think he's one of them.
Well, he flashed last year.
Yeah.
He looked good last year. I had Zeke last year. I had Pollard for most of the year because I felt like he was just one of like the few guys that was worth holding on to as a handcuff last year. Someone who, if the lead dog goes down, he's probably going to be a big producer for that, however long that time is. And same is going to be said again for this year. Also, we get to see Mike McCarthy. Maybe he's going to get these running backs involved in the screen game a little bit more, back like the Eddie Lacy days in Green Bay.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun to see.
Mike McCarthy's going to have a huge impact on this offense, I think.
I think so too. There was a lot that was said about him when he left Green Bay, but I think the Cowboys just they made the right move by getting him.
I think Rodgers misses him now.
Dude. Maybe.
I bet you he'd welcome him back with open arms today.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, well, if that was all we were going to mention about the Cowboys, we do have one more headline. Josh Gordon submitted his letter applying for reinstatement. Okay, that's everything.
Yeah, that's over. See you later.
All right, bud.